You have to think about what you're doing. You can't just stagger and slug your way down. A lot of accidents in mountaineering occur on the descent, and it's because people get to the summit and they're totally let down their guard and they've used all of their energy just to get to the top.
It takes 5 hours to climb down to Camp 4. In the safety of his tent, David reveals to Howard that he had a difficult climb to the summit.
Howard, this is South Cole.
Hey, David, this is Howard. Go ahead.
This morning I drank about a quart of Kool-Aid. Then I stopped and I threw up about 6 times. I thought I would have to come down, but I didn't want to leave the team behind because it was just, I kept thinking I'd feel better. I had the worst trip down in the South Summit I've ever had.
Over. I got that, David. How's everybody doing? Over.
We gotta get these guys out of here. He's a little sick.
David Carter's condition has worsened. Despite his own illness, David Brashears picks up the camera to shoot Ed taking care of Carter.
Tell me what's up.
He's at 93 and 133, so your pulse ox is really good. Your throat feels real constricted? Yes. Okay. He's on 4-liter flow. David started having problems coming down on the South Summit. Couldn't catch his breath. So we called the doc at base camp, told him what was going on, and he doesn't know whether it's something like pulmonary edema or possibly the fact that David was having some lung infection earlier on that he's been fighting, and whether the altitude just exacerbated that. So I think the best option, if he can handle it, is to get him down to Camp 2. The lower we get him, the better.
What about oxygen at Camp 2?
Yeah, there's a bottle.
They have just climbed to 29,028 feet, the summit of Everest, an exhausting accomplishment. Now they will try to descend 5,000 more feet to get Carter to a safer altitude.
Hey, David. Good luck, man. Sorry you had to get sick like this.
David Brashears stays at Camp 4 to rest as Ed accompanies Carter.
He would go 10 or 20 feet, and then we'd stop for 5 minutes.
Take your time.
You know, he'd have to catch his breath, he'd have to take his mask off, he was overheating, desperately trying to gain control of his breathing. I thought we could get to Camp 2, but as it turned out, it took us a long time. It took 4.5 hours to get down to Camp 3. So it was about 7 p.m. then, and we got into the tent, and that's when it started to get a little hairy.
After hours of labored breathing, Carter gains enough strength to get on the radio.
Carter, my man, how you doing?
I'm still alive. It's been a hell of a day.
Tell me, this is very important, Carter. I need to get a feeling for whether you feel like your lungs are full of fluid, do you feel like it's difficult to get air, you feel really short of breath, or do you feel more like it's wheezy in your upper airway, like you have asthma? Over.
I really don't feel like I have anything in my lungs. It feels like my throat is closed up on me. Or I have asthma, something like that. Last night, I coughed up a lot of green, hard chunks. A couple of them had blood over.
Carter seems to be improving. But 2 hours later, a desperate call from Ed.
I need Howard. We can't get it.
What's going on, Ed?
David's tired. Like his throat obstructed.
Ed, I'm going to keep talking. You don't have to respond. See if you can do a Heimlich and get him to expel whatever is obstructing. Over. Okay, Ed, listen to me. I'm not sure where you're at. If it's an obvious obstruction, you can push it out with a Heimlich, do that. If it just seems like Carter's airway is closing and you need to breathe for him, go ahead and start mouth-to-mouth ventilation. Over.
Okay, hang on, I did. I have a dozen Heimlichs and it seemed to help.
Tell me what Carter's doing now. What is his respiratory status? Over.
He's sitting up. We did some more Heimlichs. It seems like he's calming down a little bit. Hang on.
Okay, what's very important, Carter, for you is I want you to take nice, easy, slow, deep breaths. Breathing quickly right now won't help you, Carter, and I know this is really scary. You're gonna do fine, but I need you to breathe deep, in and out, and in and out, slowly. And know that Ed and the rest of us are gonna take care of you, over.
David was desperately gasping for air. I wasn't sure he was going to make it through the night. I mean, he had his doubts, and it's a scary situation to be up there all alone, thinking that, you know, here this guy might die on you.
There we go. Looks like we have a record level. That light came on. That's plugged in. Okay, David, what's going on?
It's been a really long couple days for me. I've been very sick coming down. I'm totally exhausted. I'm having problems getting a full breath. My throat feels like I'm breathing through a straw right now. This is God's gift up here. That was the first time in my life when I literally thought I was going to die. I still, to this point, have not even thought of summiting. I just want to get down the mountain. Choking to death at 23,000 feet. The first thing that went through my mind was how isolated I am, and I'm not going to be rushed to a hospital and revived. I knew that when I was choking, there's just two people there. It was myself and Ed, and it was frightening. I don't want to die. I don't want to die in the mountains. I don't want to die young. But since I've survived it, it's a big part of my life now.
Ready?
11. 10 days after coming off Everest, the climbers returned to Seattle for a final session of testing. The scientists have now had a chance to analyze the data.
The pulse oximetry data collected on this expedition showed, as expected, the decline in oxygen with higher ascent to altitude. And David Carter in particular had lower blood oxygen levels, which seemed to go along with some of the problems he was having on the mountain. We need to do more careful analysis of the relationship of the pulse oximeter readings to the MRI scans.
Dr. Hackett has looked closely at the MRI scans, searching for abnormalities. He discovers that exposure to extreme altitude can leave its mark on the human brain.
Climbers without oxygen.
Hackett addresses the climbers.
And actually the only abnormality we found was a very mild atrophy in the brain of Ed Viesters, who is the one that has climbed many times to high altitude without supplemental oxygen. And what we'd like to do is follow him over a longer period of time to see if this is something that might actually progress with his high altitude career.
Ed lived by the river.
Oh, boy.
And this was our first time it had been this high. Over. Oh, boy.
Oh, man. You were feeling bad there.
We have reviewed all the tests you see, and you can see that there's a real difference in your performance at high altitude. At the higher elevations, you're obviously in survival mode. From the numbers, we could see that your performance was deteriorating, and had we had those numbers available, we would have probably suggested that you might not want to continue.
I'm shocked, and I realize now how sick I was. And it's just a haze up there.
You can't tell up there.
No.
We're all just getting by.
Yeah.
I'm looking at David for the first time at Camp 4, and typically, you know, I'm talking to him on the radio, and in fact, you saw when he was coughing, he had the microphone off. Mm-hmm. So I'm hearing his responses. I'm not watching him cough or seeing how awful he looks.
The question then we ask is, what happens if you're in an emergency situation? Are you able to think quickly? Are you able to think clearly about what you need to do to survive and get down?
You can see how in his condition he could have not tied his rope correctly, not tied into his harness correctly, right, not clipped into the anchor correctly.
I love this mountain. I have learned a lot. I summited, but I still don't even think about the summit. I'm still thinking about that night at Camp 3, being near death, possibly dying. When I passed by the last ladder in the icefall, I knew that I had survived Mount Everest.
David, we're curious now that you've been to the top. You think this was your last trip up this mountain? Over?
Well, it's the hardest day I've ever had on the mountain, and I have no intention of ever going to the top of Everest again. I need lots of people to prevent me from changing my mind.
Take the test yourself. See the 360 views from the top. Return to Everest and experience everything but the extreme altitude. Start climbing at www.pbs.org. Educators can order this show for $19.95 plus shipping and handling by calling 1-800-255-9424. And to learn more about how science can solve the mysteries of our world, ask about our many other NOVA videos. NOVA is a production of WGBH Boston. Major funding for NOVA is provided by the Park Foundation, dedicated to education and quality television.
This program is funded in part by Northwestern Mutual Life, which has been protecting families and businesses for generations. Have you heard from the quiet company? Northwestern Mutual Life.
And by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and viewers like you.
This is PBS.